Nope. I can't think of a reason why these episodes would be skipped in broadcast and never dubbed in the West. No siree, none. So as I said in the big introductory vid to doing these reviews, yeah, from here on out, the first season of the Rockman.exe anime got majorly screwed over in broadcast when it was imported. In fact, if you only saw the Mega Man NT Warrior dub, yeah, you're going to be a bit lost for quite a bit due to the chronology differences.
This is where the series as well begins to adapt the arc and elements of Mega Man Battle Network 2, whereas the first 25 episodes were loosely based on Battle Network 1, and to a far lesser extent the still at the time upcoming Battle Network 3. Thus, as Battle Network 2 certainly had more material to adapt and give story potential, it is one of the reasons why the back half of this season does get a bit more positive reception than the first. Though there are still issues with the storytelling here that is further ironed out later. And thus it all begins with Netto being sent solo on vacation.
I'm pretty sure as an 11-year-old kid he still needs a bit of supervision on that. Hello? Yuichiro? Haruka? That's your kid there. He's not exactly shown like he has in the games that he can handle himself solo. Why are they terrible parents in this incarnation?
Oh, and Yuichiro informs him that despite unlocking style change, the ability is not done evolving, and he's got a few more forms to unlock in the future. Anyways, yeah, this trip is his second place prize for being the runner-up at the N1 Grand Prix. But seriously, the tournament runners couldn't spring for a second ticket for a Guardian to come along? He almost died competing in that damn thing, it was so badly run. Well, whatever. The first leg of his trip sends him to the southern island region of Hawaii, where he then finds all his friends already in swimwear.
Didn't you guys just see him off at the airport? Wait, right, Yai's rich. They could literally just join him on the entire trip. Literally me anytime the temperature's above 70, depending on relative humidity.
So yeah, it's a beach episode in an anime, and surprisingly a tame one at that, considering most anime beach episodes go for just straight-up all-out shameless fan service, even in media directed at younger audiences. Especially surprising how tame it is, considering some of Studio Zebek's later shameless fan service series, or earlier moments of fan service in their other works.
Meh, the hyper fan service one occurs in the later end of Stream.
Though the coincidences just keep coming, as Mesa intrudes on their fun by scaring the crap out of Netto with that damn robot shark he skewered and then stole from the robot fish episode.
When are you returning that to the aquarium? Yes, you're a secret government agent, but it doesn't mean you can just keep private property.
Actually, he's here to investigate sightings of a ghost ship, which has been seen prowling around the coast for the last week. A rumor Yaito's in the know about, thus the obvious route of why they would get involved and have this explained to them, of course, is not utilized, as Mesa's still trying for that stupid secret identity crap which interferes with him doing his damn job. And because he refuses to, when Yaito and Meilu decide to head back to Yai's beach house, Mesa ends up dragging the rest of the kids straight into the ghost ship and endangering their damn lives, as Mesa and Toru are summarily captured in nets before the ship literally sinks into the drink, leaving Netto and Dekao adrift and away from any easy path back to the island.
Have I mentioned that Mesa really sucks at his job enough yet? This is why I continually drag the Commander Beef subplot crap. It keeps resulting in idiot plots where the main cast only has to get involved because the people who should be dealing with the problem are all idiots.
Fortunately, this is Yai we're talking about here, and we get reminded on how her character gets used for ridiculously over-the-top stupid rich crap in the series, as we're showcased her literal army of maids pilot a submarine to their rescue from a hangar underneath her summer villa.
Again, she's the daughter of the CEO of a game development company. I mean, I know game company CEOs now are given tens of millions a year in ridiculously high pay rates. Just look at any of Jim Sterling or Bellular's rants about Bobby Kotick being ridiculously overpaid by Activision. But this amount of inordinate and excessive wealth isn't exactly commonplace, especially in a world where their company is still considered third-rate. Yeah, someone could cite, say, Seto Kaiba in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise as a counterexample of a game developer CEO whose inordinate wealth gives him access to this kind of crap, but at least in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, it was long established that game development was Seto's passion, He single-handedly revolutionized the industry, his company had multiple branches, and originated as a military technology developer, so has ridiculous amounts of capital and resources already plugged into planes, trains, automobiles, and ships of all sorts. So, most of his stuff was all company-owned anyways. I doubt Capcom owns a company submarine.
I know I really should complain less about this, considering that Yae is later shown to have her own space shuttle, and technically that's even more egregious, but this kind of narrative shortcutting is why I really don't like the first season of the anime. At least in Access onwards, I care less about such as use, because it's far less frequent since Yae is gone, and their reuse of those assets isn't as egregious as it's a utilization of established lore and content. And keeping a story consistent with established lore and refusing to contradict itself is a good thing. Thus, it is less of a problem there. But this is one of the reasons I'm glad Yaito eventually gets booted from the series, so such narrative shortcuts couldn't be used to make things easy and resolve problems for the main cast without effort, as opposed to them having to work through them. So yeah, the team's off to save the captives. Yae's army of maids quickly finding the ship on sonar and firing at it. Actually, they're airbags that force the ship to the surface, allowing them to board it, and summarily be spooked one by the contents of the ghost ship, including Rockman. For as it's revealed, Rockman is terrified of ghosts.
Ironic, considering in all the other media, he is a ghost in a shell. Standalone complex.
Yeah, this is another old trope in Japanese media, where there's always someone overly terrified by the possibility of the supernatural in access to the rest of the group, especially in a haunted house-styled scenario. It just makes less sense when it's an AI having that trait, considering in some interpretations AI can be viewed as digital spirits. Amusingly, however, a digital spirit is what we're dealing with, as a digital realized virus is what stalks and frightens the group, capturing all of them until it's just Netto and Rockman left who are free. He finds Toru in a cold storage locker separate from the others, however, with Toru distracting the ghost long enough for Netto to jack into the ship's computer system to figure out what's going on with this. Ultimately, it just breaks down to Netto deleting the viruses in the system with the assistance of a bit of more experience with Heat Gut style to free the others, before finding Mesa's befriended the realized virus that's taken over as the ghost ship's AI. Turns out it mistook Mesa and Toru as a prize catch due to the mecha shark, and went on the defensive over its prize into attacking them, letting the lot off the ship before it submerges itself again in search of more fish.
Hold it! Why was a fishing vessel submerging itself like that? Why is it designed after an oil tanker? Wouldn't submerging itself get in the way of any personnel the ship would need to have? How is it out and about on its own like that? Dimensional area tech and Russia's bullshit cheat to the system hadn't been introduced yet. Why was this thing being treated as a ghost ship if this is a known technology? There are so many unanswered questions with this plot!
The wrap-up. The only battleship used was a sword, making my life easier in continuing attempts to keep track of ships and special ability use in this series. We have Ghost Summer Love Score for a haunting evil spirit story, which originally aired in early September. A lot of Japanese series for some reason tend to have spooky stories appear in their episodic media during the waning days of summer. It's just tradition with them. Or at least it was tradition, as in more recent times there have become more frequent adoptions of Halloween stories in late October in their media, thanks in part to that holiday going global. We have the Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Award to Rockman for his cowardice in the face of potential ghosts existing. I noticed you did not get freaked out at all by Skullman when you first encountered and then fought him, dude. That actually would have been a better justification for this too, had during that whole event that the problem Netto and Rockman faced was rooted in Rockman's unusual and abnormal fear of a Navi, thus resulting in Netto having operating problems they would have needed to work through that would have tied in far better into their self-improvement arc that eventually resulted in their mastery of Life Sword. There's a lot of hindsight to be seen in this whole mess, making this episode starting off the story arc for the next collective of episodes start off poorly and frustratingly. Unsurprisingly in that, this was another contribution to the series by Kenichi Yamada. And with this being only the third contribution to the series he's done, you can see why I just do not like his work here, or actually anything else I have record of him doing. His big main writing work beyond Rockman being for Cardfight Vanguard, which I don't watch or get involved in.
He unfortunately inevitably writes episodes for each season of this series, but just from the 3 he's done, it is easy to see the pattern of nonsense we'll see not changing that much. But at least he is only a minority of nonsense in this whole ordeal. There are worse writers on this show. But the beach episode nonsense isn't over, cause this is actually a 2-parter with the next episode in the vacation arc. If you can't tell from that clip, this is the Naruhisa Arakawa episode of the season. Okay, let me expand on that opening bit for a minute. And to do so, I need to go back to my old wheelhouse of the Tokusatsu reviewer and revisit Naruhisa Arakawa for those who haven't seen those videos, as it actually ties into this. This is also presuming my episodes on Naruhisa Arakawa have not been taken down.
Naruhisa Arakawa, if you don't know the name, is the second most synonymous person in the tokusatsu genre to Super Sentai, the source material that is adapted into Power Rangers. He has worked on Super Sentai since the 1980s on and off, ultimately making him the longest overall contributor and the Sentai franchise's lore master, with his experience in so many of the series and their cohesive continuities. Jetman, Mega Ranger, Deca Ranger, Abba Ranger, Gokaiger, Akiba Ranger, Kira Major, all big hits he's done, and in Mega Ranger's case, adapted into a big hit, which he has had a significant hand in. While he's done work for other companies and written other series, my biggest non-Sentai favorite of his being his work on Kamen Rakuga, most of his tropes and recurring story devices have inevitably been seen and ironed out in those entries, with honestly most of the series he's made popular being from his excellent use of ensemble dynamics and character pieces clashing with the ludicrous elements of an otherwise serious setting. He is very good at putting a bunch of goofballs through hell and serious crises and getting you to care about them all along the way. Numerous other writers tried to reverse engineer his magic, and frankly it cannot be done, as every time anyone else tries to use his style to their own benefit, it's resulted in the casts being either idiots, assholes, waylaid for the glorification of a Mary Sue, or from their own actions showcase how the story itself is stupid and an idiot plot. Super Sentai after Gokaiger struggled so badly because, with exception to Go Busters and Kyoryuger, every Sentai was written in a way that was in some form trying to mimic his style of character and story dynamics, because his material had become so synonymous with Super Sentai, and failing disastrously almost consistently.
And why did I bring all this up when I keep having to tell people I'm not a tokusatsu reviewer anymore? Because this is a case of Arakawa lapping himself and overusing one of his own stock story plots 2 weeks in a row between the multitude of series he was working on at that time.
The running Super Sentai series of the year 2002 was Ninpu Sentai Hurricaneger, the series adapted into Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Ninja series in Japan, for some reason in the modern day, always come off as rather comical or farcical. I just don't know why. But Sentai especially tries to play such farces up, resulting in mixed to borderline disastrous effects. The original Ninja Sentai, Kaku Ranger, which was adapted into the 3rd season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, actually shed its comedy to fix itself after it was received negatively. And the most recent Ninja Sentai, Ninja, is one of the worst series Toei has ever made. But Hurricaneger stands in the middle of it, being the most consistently written and darkest toned of the 3 Ninja series, with it ultimately viewed as a black comedy, which did not translate well when it was adapted.
Though ironically, Ninja Storm had better acting across the board. Yes, seriously.
And as such, when doing comedy plots darkly, you can do silly stuff like, say, have one of the members of the evil generals kicked out when she accidentally creates a superior version of herself as a monster of the week, thus leading her to becoming an idol duet with her sworn nemesis Nanami Nono, aka Hurricane Blue, aka actress Nao Nagasawa, in her continuing quest to obtain the elusive paycheck.
何でもよかったの。生きてる意味が見つかれば。 でもそのジャカンジャでもまた落ちこぼれ。あの二人を
信じてたんだぞ。悪だったお前がいいやつになって一緒にみんなの心に届く歌を歌うんだって。
信用させるチャンスだから乗ってるふりしただけよ。私はみんなが苦しむのが一番楽しいんだもん。
And it's not the last time either. G3 Princess, the idol team-up of Go On Yellow and Silver with their enemy Kegalesia and Go Onger, would actually be a recurring plot in that series. Idol girls are a thing when Naruhisa Arakawa is writing a series. But I bring this all up in regards to Rockman.exe, because literally the week before Hurricane's episode about an evil idol singer that was written by Naruhisa Arakawa, was this episode written by Naruhisa Arakawa, which is the introduction of Rockman.exe's own recurring virtual idol character, Aki, the world's first AI singer.
They should have named her Sharon Apple.
Unfortunately, as is seen straight out of the gate, this is also an example of Xebec trying to make use of CGI infrequently in their works for characters, and it looks just plain wrong. Now, it works with mecha with things like Zoids that are easy to puppet due to their bodies being all sharp geometric angles. But you don't get that with things that are supposed to mimic living beings. Aki looks like she's straight out of a PlayStation 1 game.
Hell, I own PS1 games that came out before this where the CGI characters look more realistic and better rendered than this.
Aki is introduced as being different from a Navi program as well. Not quite self-sentient in the normal means, just a program to perform songs for an audience and interact simply with others in a less sophisticated way than a companion AI.
So basically, Hatsune Miku.
But as is cliche of this story trope from Arakawa, and again, why I brought up the recurrence of the story with him, is inevitably the main cast girls get roped into the idol mess.
Ugh, I forgot about this. Because of it, fans of the .exe verse got more material than the Cat Navies and Empress roll for the purposes of fetish fuel.
It's part of a contest to find a real girl equivalent to Aki for use in promotional campaigns for her, but something's up with it, as the girls are all abducted through use of one of the island's street cleaning drones, resulting in Netto pulling a dangerous stunt to get on top of it and try to free the girls, only to find other victims also being taken. And to think, they could have really used Mikoto Misaka for this. Every contestant is apparently getting abducted, and the contest runners have no understanding what's up. Aki's apparently sentient enough to be depressed that someone's using her good name to commit such crimes.
And she's responsible for it, isn't she?
Resulting in Netto and the guys all putting on the idol outfit themselves to uncover the culprit by them getting abducted too. Again, this is a cliche for Arakawa. This is indulged infrequently in his works that I wouldn't bat an eye at it, if it weren't for becoming such a common trope thanks in part to him that a lot of people use it stupidly and badly in a lot of other media that has just become retroactively groan-worthy and embarrassing, as it actually works. The cleaning robots take them down under the island, where all refuse and food distribution is managed away from the tourists, and where a lot of people can be hidden out of sight. They find all the girls down here in a storage warehouse for fish and get them out, Miyuki and Saloma getting involved as they were also in the area investigating rises in virus activity, and came across the contest, with the entire group eventually converging in a broadcast studio playing Aki's music, and finding Aki herself has gone evil and is responsible for everything.
And I hope this makes clear why I brought up Arakawa's history with the idol stories, and the recurrence in this case with the Hurricane episode that aired the previous week as this one, as the evil idol pattern is his main variant when it comes to these things.
Hell, the illusion in this case deepens as the virus-infested Dark Aki. Yeah, a similar look would be sported for two more idol-like characters Arakawa would write sometime later, Mia and Nai of Maji Ranger. I have no idea how much influence he might have had on their character design since he was, at best, a secondary writer on Maji Ranger, but Gothic Lolita is a pretty popular style to some, so it wouldn't surprise me if just the general style was being echoed in both cases. Ironically, the shadow viruses she is infested with aren't an easy enemy for them to deal with, as Netto doesn't catch on immediately to said enemy's weakness being sword chips, instead firing at her with cannon chips that he suddenly has, and the other Navis not doing well with their own skill sets. However, amidst the battle, Netto sees the viruses infesting her are keyed to the gems on her dress, with Netto finally sending a sword chip to cut it out of her, before using Heat Gut style and the sword his Heat Gut's hand can manifest to slash it into junk data. Aki returns to normal, the contest is called off, though the girls will still get a chance to show off, and Aki will end up being a recurring character for the rest of the season. The wrap-up. Same tools as last time got used, plus Netto finally getting another chip in his stockpile with them showcasing the use of High Cannon. Though where he got it is a good question. We have a writer's cliché to Naruhisa Arakawa for one of his many idol plots. I just generally do not have an idea why he has a thing for them. We have pointless plot diversion and fan service for the hell of it. Mariko shows up at the beginning of the episode in a bikini as she's airdropped in for Yai to answer something on her homework, as opposed to the rich girl just sending her teacher an email with her question, which is immediately followed by Miyuki and Saloma sunbathing on a boat, and then Midori in one of the idol suits, before throwing that away for her skimpy swimsuit, before the story reveals that she's not even in Juwai like the rest of the cast. The former three get involved tangentially in this, but for no reason other than them to show up in the skimpy idol dresses. We have cross-dressing is not comedy, for Netto, Dekao, and Toru dressing up as idols to get mistaken for girls in order to find the abducted women. To be fair, it's better than most cases of cross-dressing is supposed to be comedy that I see in Japanese media, as it has actual purpose as opposed to a side gag or just it being treated as comedy into and of itself. Ergo why when Arakawa's Deca Ranger had the character Deca Break be a regular crossdresser for the sake of his job as an undercover officer in order to root out criminals, I generally didn't have a problem with it. This episode was blah. Look, I generally do like Naruhisa Arakawa's brand of crazy, as he can generally make what he's doing work, but that requires the prerequisite that he be a regular writer on the series to have his foot in the door in regards to being able to provide proper characterization for the cast he uses, as otherwise his stuff can unintentionally end up intrusive or a bit off the wall, and it kind of is here. It is not harmful or stupid at all, like I find the Commander Beef subplot, but just a bit too chock full of coincidences to get the women of the cast into idol attire and singing, and unfortunately there's the problem of many of the cast, while being talented voice actresses, are not comparatively as good as singers, or at least were not at that time. And it usually takes cast members being musically inclined and talented, and them given the proper time of the episode to show off that talent, for this plot from Arakawa to work, as such is often approached as a cross-advertisement for the actress in such a capacity for marketability purposes. Now Nagasawa and Hurricaneger? Yeah, she's recorded her own music albums, with Hurricaneger being the launching of a short-lived singing career that she retired from in 2008 because she just found she liked acting more. The same happened with the other girls that got featured in Arakawa's various idol episodes. They usually would have a short discography connected with their work. Japanese soundtracks connected to TV series often do have the actors perform their own insert themes, and looking most of the actresses in this case up, I saw that if it wasn't an insert theme for their respective character in a series, then it was a relatively dull and skippable end theme no one ultimately cares about. This isn't true across the board. Meiru's actress Kaori Mizukashi actually has the most song credits out of the regulars here, but her history is not exactly a notable record in comparison to, say, Nana Mizuki, who's most frequent in bridging both the singer and voice actress lifestyles with her multiple albums and performances for series in tandem with her roles in them, and in fact had roles where her tenure as a songstress was utilized in the roles she was cast for.
ころで折れる剣じゃありません。
Then again, it is kind of unfair to make a comparison to one of the few actresses to produce albums that top Japan's music sales charts. I actually own a bunch of games and anime that Nana Mizuki did the voice work in. Should probably watch the Japanese versions to appreciate that more.
And as such, I can see the intent of wanting to promote the actresses just fine, but when neither the story nor the performer themselves allows them the proper venue for that promotion, it can just end up feeling like a waste, and it ultimately does so here. With the fan service as well, not helping things at all.
待ってろよ、ロックマン。ダウンタウンだろうが、血に飢えた野獣だろうが。
Netto's world tour continues, with him finally going solo on this trip, this time to the America equivalent Ameropa.
He is so getting mugged.
Sure enough, Rockman warns him about that exact thing as he exits the airport, ending up running into Enzan as he does, who is on a business trip representing his father's company again. It's something he apparently has to do often, as his dad hates having to come to Ameropa to deal with their Western distributors.
この町を観光する気なら一つだけ覚えておけ。市長のダリルには用心しろ。
I'm betting Enzan's been involved in business enough to be able to smell a con man.
親愛なるヘブンデスティの皆様、アメロッパ一清潔なこの町に素晴らしいゲストがやってきました。
Really? Really? I mean, Los Angeles has its problems, but I could name a lot more corrupt cities than that to use for this.
Also, can anyone else read that co-qualifier on that? I know it's meant to be practically unreadable with how small it is, but I can make it out plain as day. And yeah, Daryl's trying to use Netto as one of the N1 champs as a political prop, though I don't quite see why. The N1 was not an international competition like the Red Sun and Blue Moon tournaments in Battle Network 4. It was just a national tournament that only affected Japan. Why would this be of any note now in another country that he's only going to because it was a prize for the competition?
The only reason I have is Enzan having a crap ton of fangirls just because he's normal famous. I'd say he was Mr. Famous, but he shows up later.
And yeah, after learning what he got roped into, Rockman encourages him to just leave. But unfortunately, the smeg-headed side of Netto's personality that comes from his naivete of youth comes to bite him, as he's never had anyone actually look up to or idolize him. Thus, to keep from losing his things in a crowd, he sets them, including Rockman, aside and out of the way, where they then are quickly stolen by a group of street rats.
You know, I'd fault Netto for this, but hell, I've done that. And I'm sure a lot of you have too when traveling through downtown. You think it's the safe thing, you think someone else whose job it might be to keep an eye on it will watch over your things while you're busy with something, and then wham! Your backpack's gone, and you're out all the homework you brought along and finished while waiting for the event to start. It's worse when it happens at reunions, as then you know the scum that took your stuff is a freaking relative.
And to be fair, this is a decent way to turn the story of Lan getting mugged in Battle Network 2 into a more than serviceable story in the anime series. In the game, it's your chip pack and all your spare and rare chips, but Netto doesn't exactly have these in this world. Just Rockman and his base chip deck. Still valuable, but it's not the same as the resources you would collect inside of a game the story is in that moment depriving you of. At least there you still had Mega Man. Here, Rockman is now MIA, and he has no way to find him as his PET is gone too. One moment of distraction, and you lose everything. Fortunately, some of the personnel find most of his missing things, but Rockman is still absent, as are Netto's skates. Seriously, those were attached to his backpack when he set them down, and then when his bag's brought back, they're not there.
ネット君、誠に残念だが諦めるしかないですな。
You arranged this theft, didn't you?
Daryl paints the blame on all the gangs of New York, I mean the gangs that populate Heaven City's back alleys, and to be fair, the likely perps did look like kids who got into some trouble on the streets.
Or were newsies. That movie was terrible.
With their leader, a man named Raoul, likely having ordered them to do it.
Oh sure! Pin it on the native black man that opposes the racist white supremacist system in order to trick foreigners into supporting the oppressors. Incidentally, I was writing these videos during the 2020 protests, so yeah, uncomfortably topical, and another sign of how deep-seated that whole mess is, that it's loud and clear in foreign media nearly 2 decades old. Keiichi Hasegawa, incidentally, is the one that wrote this, and he tends to be spot on in his research to foreign to Japan subject matter when such has come up in media he's written for. Some because it's universally true regardless of culture, even though it's expressed differently by nation. Others because it's just fun to slam foreigners' misconduct from the safe zone of another nation entirely.
This could have explained why it's one of the episodes that aired far out of order of the series broadcast, as one of the pieces of filler content Kids WB aired after they had already run through the season's end arc months before, and were at the time waiting for the dub of access to finish being completed. The finale arc had been put out there in August of 2004, while this hit American airwaves in October of 2004. But I honestly cannot find any significant controversies in 2002, 2003, or 2004 that would have caused things to be shuffled in airing like this. Or actually for this corrupt politician act for a City of Heaven rep to be a topical subject matter of illusion or critique. I honestly don't think it was representative of any one person. Just a shout out to a system that doesn't treat its citizens well in the same way that Gundam Seed, which aired at the same time as the series, also was doing callouts at American-rooted prejudices and racism through allegory in its own story, with their America equivalent being the cause of their entire war. A lot of series in the 2000s ended up doing that, really, many of which were unfairly slammed in import to show how badly the message was missed.
ボルト、この後の私の予定は
夕方にクリームランドのプライド王女と会食。
Wow, that is a bad mistranslation on the fan subber's part. I did say that happens on occasion with these subs since they were translated by ear, as I said. In fact, this was a story seeding for a later part of the arc. And if you didn't catch what was actually being said, he said he was meeting with Princess Pride of Creamland.
Anyways, Netto heads downtown and immediately runs into the thieves when he makes a detour for food, with the thieves trying to thwart him with slapstick, spicy mustard, a Scooby-Doo mini door skit, and a crap ton of parkour, before they're eventually cornered by the enemy of all kids in the big city, a fence.
さあ返せ嫌だ返すもんか市長の手先なんかどっか行っちゃえ
Not his department! He's a foreign celebrity, or were you not paying attention?
I seriously cannot connect their thought process on this. Yeah, election fraud is bad, and it's explicable why legit businesses would want to distance themselves from any connection to such accusations, thus explaining Enzon's conduct.
In 2002, at any rate. You know, before corrupt backroom deals were done out in the open as they are now.
But why would roping Netto into this do anything? Hell, wouldn't it look worse for all sides involved to involve a high-profile foreigner like this? Raoul, ironically, seems the most sane in this and just wanting Netto out of everyone's hair once he finds the kids on his territory. Though thanks to Daryl's own corrupt conduct, he's publicized Netto's visit as him coming to clean out the city's rubbish, namely the denizens of the downtown area he's looking to demolish and turn into an in-city amusement park.
So, once again, it looks like Scooby-Doo was right. Every major villain is ultimately motivated by the acquisition of real estate and the subjugation of the working class into paying for them to use it. Oh god, now that I'm a homeowner, that technically applies to me.
So with the misunderstanding cleared up, the kids give Rockman back, only for Raoul to challenge him good-naturedly to a net battle against his Navi, Thunderman. Though after so many encounters with Electman, Netto's got some different expectations for how Thunderman will fight, thus doesn't expect Thunderman's defensive tactics, which more control the flow of battle in his favor. After all, Electman doesn't have the technique to create a freaking lightning dragon out of his own power. Bowza Kerga indeed. However, the fight's interrupted by a sudden earthquake causing ruptures in the water system of the surrounding area, which supposedly was caused by the virus Daryl released to try and get rid of them? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing how those two things properly connect to each other. He wants to wash the area clean, but I don't see how flooding one region of the city will do that. It ends their fight prematurely, as Raoul has his priorities entirely straight, Netto deciding ultimately to help out in thanks for helping him get back Rockman. The two Navis delaying the water viruses they released, while Daryl then sends in his construction crews to demolish the area while everyone's distracted with the flooding that is driving them out, and the viruses infecting the system around them.
Did you declare eminent domain, dude? The city doesn't own private land for you to be able to do this. I'm pretty sure a lawsuit would crush you.
どうです？効果的な攻撃でしょ？
愉快愉快。こんな薄汚い町、さら地に。
Again, I don't think this is representative of any one politician, but this is totally a Western movie plot. Hyperspace bypass, anyone?
They jack into the construction equipment, only to be attacked by a super dragon virus that can tank even Thunderman's finishing move, putting them all on the defensive. However, as Yuichiro said, Rockman's new style change power can give him new abilities as he needs them. And in this case, to fight a giant electric dragon, he needs defensive and an elemental advantage. And thus, Wood Shield style is born, which instantly KOs the dragon and deletes it.
Ironic, considering with exception to it giving us a barrier, Shield Cell arguably is the most worthless and the Wood Buster the trickiest of the 4 elemental busters to use. Well, unless you're talking about Wood Soul. Because Wood Soul's Charge Shot actually allows you to chip away a duo's health pretty fast at the end of Blue Moon.
But yeah, this is where Daryl went over the line into illegal conduct, and he summarily gets arrested. I'd say, just like in real life, but honestly, I'm still waiting for the cults of personality to disperse to actually get a sane reality back for that to happen. With Enzon having been the informant against Daryl's actions, as alluded to at the beginning with the warning. Stay out of it, I've already taken care of everything. And thus, it's off to Netto's next destination on the world trip. The wrap-up. 2 battleships and a new style change here this week. We have I've Got Soul, to Rockman unlocking his third of many, many forms. We have Day Late, Dollar Short, to Hinoken, who makes a brief appearance in this episode as having just made it to the Jawai Islands, just as Netto has left so he can't get a rematch with the younger net battler. This episode is actually really good, touching on some things that always remain topical as good narrative allegory does, giving a decent reason to why Netto gets involved despite the plot not actually requiring him to do so. And the fact it didn't require him to be there to resolve it is also good from the perspective of, as, well, done this way, it doesn't make him the special savior, as is the narrative trap so many bad writers fall into with world-traveling characters. He's there, he wants to help, he helps. Don't need more than that. Raoul and Thunderman are cool and well introduced to match their game counterparts, so there's nothing here that doesn't work besides asking why Daryl even went about doing this for an amusement park that just displays a lot of people. Then again, even that is more than some writers actually give to their episodic antagonists, so credit where it's due on even making the veneer of an effort in fleshing him out. As honestly, with this being the first time I've actually seen this episode...
Yes, I missed it when it originally aired, and it was only aired once.
I expected something different, so there was some good misdirects from what could have just been a straightforward trick 2 groups into fighting story. Good on Keiichi Hasegawa, who wrote this episode, for avoiding that cliche. We open this time on Enzon and Blues, the pair exasperated on them being forced to wait on Miss Millionaire.
Yes! Seriously?
Who called them for a meeting on some matters, and is then explicably made to wait for other matters not disclosed, at least until Enzon gets fed up and tries to leave.
She is toying with him, and Enzon is no one's boy toy. At least not until Annetta enters the picture. Don't look at me like that, you all know the fanfiction for it exists.
In reality, she is a net battler looking for a challenge and entertainment in her entitled rich life, and her interim desires are holding up Enzon from completing another business contract for his father, once again in the role of vice president of IPC.
It would not surprise me if long-term this would end up tied into the season-long story arc about IPC developing the next generation of PET technology, which would tie to Access and Streams events. Then again, that might just be people looking at things and retroactively giving them purpose, as sometimes happens with Ensemble Writers Room Media, where some writers push things forward that the others basically ignore, which is why it can be both good and bad. Gundam Seed Destiny, I know, was heavily harmed by that kind of rotation. This episode was the first writing credit contribution by Naruko Mawakawa, by the way, a regular to Zebeck's productions. But by the same evidence of her first contribution, she couldn't exactly seed much before this, if that was the case.
But as this is the next step in Netto and Rockman's world tour, it again distracts Miss Millionaire, Again, yes, seriously, that is her name. From her duties to her company, and leaves Enzan to stew in her waiting room while she goes off to challenge Netto. And she ropes him into such a challenge when he finds a gift for his mom.
うわ高い。ネット君のお小遣い20年分だ。
I have no idea whether they remember to move the decimal points for money conversion purposes between countries either. That could either be the equivalent of a 200,000 yen bag, which is $2,000, or it could be a $2 million bag. Both are stupid expensive, I just don't know which side of the fence to fall on with this. Hell, do you know what I did when I got a spare extra $2,000? Basically all the newer gunplay you see on the set, and I have a bunch boxed up downstairs. Yeah, 3 months of consecutive 60-hour work weeks during the coronavirus pandemic added up to a lot of spare cash, in case anyone was wondering why last year was anemic on video releases, and part of why videos this year were so delayed. I kinda went a bit nuts on the gunpla, to say nothing of what I splurged on in regards to last year's anime summer sales. But at least I didn't spend that much on any one item.
But yeah, the bag is Miss Millionaire's in on getting Netto and Rockman to accept her challenge, giving them a chance to win the bag, an underground net battle game known as Survival 7, which she runs in tandem with her Navi Snake Man in the Net Navi Museum she also runs. And unfortunately, this is another plot where you can totally see a naive kid walking into a serpent's den like this with hopes of winning a gift for a family member. It's an obvious con to an adult, well, most adults, but something a kid would legitimately fall for. And it helps in all this that the voice actors guesting for Snake Man and Miss Millionaire, Ryusei Nakao, aka Frieza, and Ryo Natsuki, aka Lulu from Final Fantasy X, Yoli from Digimon 02, and Naomi Flugo from Zoids, are playing into well-worn roles for them playing characters baiting others into their traps for entertainment purposes. And Survival 7, on top of being excellent alliteration, is all things considered a relatively fair survival game with the odds stacked against you. Millionaire, as she initially seems at least, isn't out to cheat them, after all, like the villains of the show we've seen, but to experience something that gets her past her boredom. Cheating at such a game defeats its purpose. The interim of Rockman's side of the challenge just her test to see if her competitor would even actually be worth it to fight directly instead of just enjoying the killing game in front of her. And Netto or any other competitor getting such an expensive prize out of it wouldn't be fair if they didn't work for it in the first place. That is, it is a mutually beneficial agreement and bet. There is no purpose to rigging this system. Of course, the other issue of a survival battle is it makes you expend resources to clear it, and Netto's burning through his chip supply pretty fast.
ですが、先ほどからお待ちの伊集院様が面会の催促を繰り返しているのですが。
ああ、そういえばそうだったわね。
And not help that this is the first time Rockman's been in such a marathon brawl in this timeline without the ability to rest. Though his exhaustion as a problem is likely more based around processor strain and the HP of his respective Navi body versus actual physical exhaustion. Of course, this is where the trick of the game is sprung. See, that game they've been entered into is totally fair. Beat the 7 challenges and you get your rewards once you exit out. The problem is, there is no exit, it just returns you to round 1. There was technically no cheat here, just a sadist glee about being honest to a fault, but not telling her opponent everything of the challenge before them.
素敵でしょ？
ではロックマンは
もう私のもの。この先ずっと私のためだけに戦ってくれるのよ。
This is where Enzan decides that he's had enough with Millionaire's conduct and dismissal, and decides to intercede by joining the game himself, smashing the region with a life sword, and leaving the game's completion to Netto, only for Snake Man to trigger the other trap, the bracelet that casts curse on the affected Navi to insta-kill them. But unfortunately it didn't count for the power boost a Navi gets from a style change.
Lady, you've got the spare money. Just buy the DVDs. Hell, you have to be rich to actually be able to buy home releases of entertainment in Japan. Each one tends to be so damn expensive. You want an actual reason the Japanese film and television entertainment industry struggles so much to make ends meet to the point it is risking total collapse right now? Well, their ridiculously overpriced home video costs are a pretty big reason, as it's actually highly prohibitive from fans actually being able to purchase them. That's why the tie-in merchandise is actually so important. It's a far lower affordability price point for both casual fans and otaku. That's why studios try to get at fans' wallets that way instead, when they could just cut down the damn price point to begin with so they could purchase those too. Who wants to pay $80 for a 3-episode Blu-ray in frickin' 2021 anyways? And that's not an exaggeration. That shit still happens.
With this, Anzan finally gets Millionaire's attention to complete the contract, and Netto wins the bag for Haruka, which Millionaire sends directly to her as her part of the earlier bargain, ending it on a happy note for everyone but Hinoken, who's now stuck working jobs in Heaven City. The wrap-up. Netto and Rockman use almost their entire chip library in this one, getting through Millionaire's trials, so that's a lot of boosts to the count on this one. We have a frustration-filled day award, to Enzan being blocked from completing a simple task for his company due to the fleeting whims of a rich woman. It's not quite a character torture episode, but it is funny for a serious character like Enzan to have the metaphorical door slammed on his face and forced to stew on the sidelines. We have a recurring punching bag for Hinoken once again being behind Netto in his trip around the world, and arriving at his last destination right after he left it. I swear, by the time he catches up, they're all going to end up being back in Japan, or very close to it. Once again, I like this episode, as it puts Netto through an ordeal that feels natural, and not forced on the character through an idiotic devolution to force them into it. He's tricked, trying to achieve an interim goal, and has to work his way out of it. That ends on interceded I don't think is the best way, as I'd rather have seen Netto work it out himself, and maybe charge shot his way out of the illusion of the game in the same way Blue smashes it, and it's another step along Enzan's character arc for the series, in that he truly does respect Netto and Rockman now, and couldn't stand idly by as they were put through the ringer in something that they'd already technically won, but were forced to continue in repetition with anyways. I also see it as Millionaire toying with him to see what the limits of his patience were, as some people like to do that and play with others until they rise up to bat away the hand prodding them. Him showing some actual agitation is nice to continue rounding him out.
Seriously, are you telling me the PET doesn't have an alarm function in this universe?
We open on Count Elec in the literal gutter, drunk off his ass and down on his luck.
Surprisingly, this episode did actually air on US broadcast television. So, booze was okay to the US censors, but not girls in swimsuits and couples going on dates? Because of course they weren't. What am I saying?
Yeah, he's in a bad state after World 3 disbanded, feeling his prior efforts were all for nothing, as he makes his way to a mansion. The mansion of his beloved mother, Tesla Electel, who scares the crap out of him when the power to the building goes out, with a character voiced by Guilmon, Goku, and Gohan herself, Masako Nozawa. And as any good parent is wont to do, they have their children's back, encouraging him to pick himself back up. And surprisingly, she was on his side in doing the whole World 3 terrorism thing. Who knows, with her advanced age, maybe she finds something wrong with net society too.
Or maybe she didn't like who Jack chose as his wife and pushed him to get away from her with the whole "I'm going to become a terrorist" thing before she spent all of their money. Then again, the entire Electel family tree ends up being a series of supplemental retcons between Jack's mom, his brother Goss's daughter Tesla. Before you ask, yes, canonically Tesla Magnets is named after her paternal grandmother, and then Jack's wife An. So it's not surprising some conflicting motivations and lore eventually make themselves known. No, really, spoilers for when An shows up in Beast Plus. Elec and his wife are estranged because she's a compulsive spender. It's a large contrast to her characterization in the games, which I will discuss when I get to those respective entries. If I get to those respective entries.
But of course, sometimes parents use the wrong things to motivate their kids, with this being the first canonical mentioning of said older brother to Jack, Goss, which plays heavily into the arc to follow.
Something that, oh my, was majorly screwed up in the release of the dub. Once again, this episode was played out of order with regards to the series airing, showing up in November of 2004, whereas Goss and Jack's major family feud, yeah, a settled plotline already. This sets up their animosity and Jack's envy that leads into and establishes that arc. That's good fucking serialized storytelling told through important punctuated character actions and voice decisions. But no, in America, we can't have that now, can we? Just change what you want as if it doesn't freaking matter. Now, it might seem like I'm getting mad at this series or its import in isolation on that point, but let me make this clear. Anime localization companies, through their unnecessary localization changes, are still pulling this shit.
Of course, she calls it as she sees it, and frankly, the reason Jack is such a loser is he keeps blaming his failures on everyone but him. Envy and his brother? Goss is older, he had a head start to success. But instead of working to at least match or exceed the pace the older man had at the same age as him, he gave up. Failed to beat Rockman time after time, he gave up and cheated, and still failed even with that. World 3 is over, and he just falls into the gutter. He's always going to fail because he doesn't put the effort in to succeed, or take advantage of the opportunities he has. Such as Netto passing through Kingland right now, this being the Great Britain equivalent of the series, with it thus being Jack's best chance for the rematch that's needed to get his confidence back. Thus, the Elect family hijacks the bus and brings it straight to outside their mansion. And with a stranded vehicle, of course you're going to do the Scooby-Doo thing and ask for help at the closest home. Upon entering, Jack and Tesla pull a disguise gambit, which pointlessly has Jack dressed up in drag as his mom, which is as always disturbing on many levels, to lead Netto into a trap and force him into battle.
So, did that come standard, or did that cost extra in your housing protection plan? Asking for a friend.
Sure enough, Rockman's also trapped, as when Netto jacked him in earlier to try and find any info about the place, it redirected him right into a cage, leaving both trapped with Jack and Electman. Of course, Netto's always up to battle, meaning this entire elaborate trap in the house, it was basically unnecessary. You could have closed the door behind him after he walked in, told him that this was his place and if he wanted to use the phone he'd have to fight for it, and you would have had the same effect.
It's showtime!
ネット君
おっとおばあちゃんの知恵袋今回のバトルナビが受けた衝撃をオペレーターも電撃で味わう
Do I need to start putting in Soji Tendo quotes? Seriously, 2 common or cross-media references to series not get made in under a minute. What the hell?
And yeah, this is an electric death match. Every time a Navi takes damage, the operator gets shocked for the same, meaning Netto can't operate Rockman properly from the injuries he's receiving.
ネット君スカルワー戦で使った作戦を覚えてるかい
Do you remember the plan we used against Skullman? I know I'm giving the original translators slack because they were forced to do their work without transcripts to proof against, but that one was just bad.
And yeah, the same plan results. Mini-bomb the area to create a smokescreen that allowed them to act with impunity for a short time and then area steal around to counterattack. And the second Jack loses the initiative, well, it's not Elect that cheats this time. He was trying to do it right for his mama, but instead it's her that breaks the rules and starts shocking Netto indiscriminately before he even really has a chance to lose outright. Especially since Jack is more used to being shocked, thus the penalty hurts him less. But wait! A Chekhov's gun has been fired! With Netto's alarm clock that still makes no damn sense in the story waking him up, thus allowing him to save Rockman at the last second, to send him a sword that straight stabs through Electman, ending the match. With this failure, Netto's free to leave as the bus starts back up, leaving Jack in a burnt-out wreck of a home?
ママが死んでもう10年だもんな
Wait, what?
Yeah, they don't explain this. Midori just shows up and asks Jack if he wants to rejoin the new World 3 Mahajirama is organizing, with Jack ultimately deciding to go after he remembers some more advice from his mom. Though considering Mahajirama is even more inept than the World 3 grunts, who knows how that will turn out?
バトルの最中、女の人の声が聞こえたんだ。エレキ伯爵を応援する年配の。なんか不思議だな。
And then Nessie photobomb, because they're at Loch Ness. Okay. The wrap-up. Once more, Netto uses most of his arsenal of swords and mini-bombs. Nothing new at this point, not even a style change this time. We have You Can't Go Home Again, to count Jack Electel returning home, only for everything he lost to still be lost. We have They're Always There in Spirit, to Tesla Electel, spectating from beyond the grave, to help her son try and get a bit of his confidence back. Though how she does this is a mystery never solved, which I think was the intention of doing the Loch Ness Monster thing at the end. Some things, no matter how hard you try, just have no legitimate explanation. We have a recurring punching bag, once more to Hinoken, for him getting on the wrong plane and ending up in Namaste, instead of showing up in Kinglang to ambush Netto. Seriously, this running gag is getting old. Yet again, this was another good episode and a strong character piece for Jack, especially with how it sets up and plays into an arc with much bigger payoffs down the line regarding his brother in the arc after the world tour ends. And of course, also playing into when Goss's daughter makes her own appearances down the line. But the whole ghost aspect of this story just bugs me, considering most things in this world do end up having a technological explanation. Them throwing the supernatural into the mix here just doesn't sit quite right with me. And again, it doesn't take advantage of the now canonical fact that Rockman is scared of ghosts at all to provide any tangential payoff. Especially since the anime incarnation entirely removes the whole Rockman was created from the remains of Netto's twin brother Saito who died as a baby backstory, meaning he is in and of himself a ghost in the machine, and that type of existence would allow other means of temporary transience via technology to permit that type of short-term reunion.
Plus, we end up seeing that later completely out of the blue with Dr. Regal, so it's not like they couldn't do that here to set such up as possible later down the line.
As the story would work just as well if Tesla here was a virtual intelligence recreation of Jack's mom, which she set up in her final days to give her son a push in the right direction if he ever came back, set up via holograms and whatnot through her family estate, with everything else flowing from the same natural points. But I guess we can't do that. And I don't know why they couldn't. This episode came to us thanks to Kenichi Araki himself, but they didn't. And despite liking this episode, that element just irks me. At last, we have reached the end of Netto's World Tour! With it opening on the Star Wars text crawl.
Mayuri Sekijima, what are you doing?
Though I find it hilarious that in that entire text scrawl that there is only one piece of English, dreamed for tasting it, which is only slightly off from dreamed of tasting it. I have seen a lot of English and mistranslation on the Japanese side of things, but this is tame in comparison to how ridiculous it can get over at Toei. But yeah, Netto's last stop is Namaste, also known as Yumland, the Indian equivalent of the world known to all of it for their curry.
I see Netto and David Lister getting along famously.
And Netto has signed himself up for a 3-day marathon tour of 88 different locations that serve the best curry in the country. It's apparently a popular enough tourist route to actually be able to finance the whole thing cheaply and regularly.
You know, I do the obligatory pulling out of my Cyclone memory to tap it, but I think I still have it in storage from the move.
Though with so many places on the route, obviously each meal should be in small portions to not overload the tourist's stomach or wallets. Wait, no, each meal is normally proportioned, so much for that.
Okay, now you're taking this too far. I have no idea how Kids WB got this on air. Yes, I totally see them having the legitimate excuse to exclude this one. It's just disgusting.
The gorging eventually takes its toll and turns Netto fat. It takes more than that to actually do it. Maybe you should try using the bathroom first. But eventually Netto reaches his last destination on the tour, and who should it be but Mahajirama.
驚いたわ。マハジャラマがカレー屋さんやってるなんて全然知らなかった。
I told you that was set up for later.
こいつは27代続く老舗のカレーショップのオーナー。
Well, good to know Mahajirama is actually good for something. We know it's not leading these doofuses into battle.
And yes, his plan is to fight Netto again, somehow beat him, and then declare to the world that World 3 is back into business. Despite, Mahajirama destroying their primary means of income, their boss is MIA, and they just wasted a crap ton of cash flying around the world chasing Netto when they could have just waited for him and his friends to come home and then sown chaos in Japan with impunity, as all the competent people that kept tripping them up were out of the country at the time. Ken thinks they can win this time with teamwork.
Except, they tried that. They tried it in the first 10 episodes, and then again when they took over rule. It didn't work out well for them then, I doubt it will now.
Oh, but you might be thinking it'll work now because Netto's all alone and has no backup. Well, no. Yaito got on board the idea of going to join Netto on the last leg of their trip, thus using a supersonic jet thing. They hightailed it from July halfway around the world to Namaste to join him. All they need to do now is find him.
綾野浩二専用のスパイ衛星を使うわ。かしこまりました。
You've got to be kidding me. That's a judge satellite from Zoi's New Century Zero. You cannot tell me no one noticed that.
お前んちって何や?
More like, what the hell is this episode?
So, apparently Mahajirama has a giant AI curry-making robot that makes curry based on teamwork or something. I don't know. How much did that cost them? Regardless, it's terrible. Echoing what I said about them trying this already and it not working. It would have, once more, made more sense to have these guys ironing out their problems before re-entering the fray against Netto, but again, we can't have intelligent villainy in Mahajirama. No, that is Madoi's territory, but of course, no one listens to her because she's the girl of the group. And it's too late for them to actually try improving their teamwork, as Netto's already at Mahajirama's shop and ready to eat to his heart's content.
そんなにカレーが好きならば、もっと刺激的なカレーをご馳走しましょう。恐怖と敗北という名のカレーを。
You're going to cryogenically freeze him for 3 million years and leave him in an abandoned mining vessel with only a hologram for companionship? Better make sure he returns that library book.
Of course, they all try to pin him in a 4-on-1 battle in a curry cyberspace, and immediately the Navis break the ranks and begin infighting and attacking each other because Mahajirama has given them no time to actually practice working together. Seriously, you have to practice this. It just doesn't come naturally for disparate personalities. But somehow, inexplicably, they start to get the hang of it, using Colorman's ball for a straight-up classic Go Ranger-inspired ball kick team attack, leaving Rockman in the cooker and cutting off communication to him, just as Yaito satellites lock into their location for their friends' navies to come in and help, with the assistance of a drill tank? Really? Really? Really?
Saga 我らのチームワークは完璧。勝つのは我らだ。
But it just goes to show that the disparate personas coming together just isn't enough to be on the same level as a group of people who generally like each other as friends and are willing to help each other out, as the difference between the two is one of clashing egos.
Again, why it would have been better had they actually been practicing in the background of this entire arc.
And hey, the machine scanning them to check it, it unlocks the greatest form of curry it can make. And as some could probably guess, with a focus on teamwork throughout the episode, this is where Rockman unlocks his third style change. Elect brother style.
Now where the hell did he get that?
And yes, this is how the Rockman anime is adapting the concept of Navi chips, allowing Rockman to pull off super combo attacks, and unfortunately setting Mahajirama's ancestral restaurant off into an explosion. So now they have a legitimate vendetta to set to...
我が悲願カレーショップマハジャラマの世界進出計画をついに実行に移す時が来たのだ
Then why did you not do that in the first place?
Actually, there is an answer to that. In fact, that was what all of this was about. Fooling the curry machine into giving up the recipe of Mahajirama's ancestors, as he couldn't get to it on his own. Either the World 3 crew would work together to get it unknowingly, or Netto's friends coming to his rescue would unlock it. Yeah, he apparently planned for that. Either way, Mahajirama would get the recipe to supercharge his business. It's just, he forgot to appease his former subordinates in the interim. And as you'd expect from the guy, honestly, all his plans are half-baked. The wrap-up. Freeze Bomb, Crossgun, and the Extension ship are all new this time. Though since Extension is just one ship that allows Team Style to do a variety of things, I'm only counting it and not all the varied Navi chips it's intended to replace and that go on the list. We have a villain faceplant, once again from Mahajirama, only he drags the rest of the former World 3 down with him this time for it. We have Food Fight! For an episode in a battle-heavy series that for some reason shifts its focus to being overtly about food. If I didn't know better, I would think this episode was written by Toshiki Inoue. This is one of his heavily used episode tropes. There's not much else to say here. I think I've made pretty clear that Mahajirama's an idiot dragging down the rest of World 3. If Midori weren't so vain, she would honestly make a better leader. If Hinoken wasn't so impulsive, he could plan better, and if Alec were, well, more sane and not so much of a sad sack, he'd probably be able to battle better. It's true, the World 3 members need each other as they all have what the others lack, but their egocentric worldviews completely prevent them from the dynamic shifts that would resolve their character conflicts. You're supposed to have villains thwarted from succeeding at their schemes due to their character flaws, but even the villains eventually need to learn something so as to not fall into the same pratfalls in behavior and conduct that screw them over nearly every goddamn time. You need some competence in them for them to be effective long-term villains or even just regular antagonists. But yeah, despite a rough start and a disappointing end, Netto's World Tour as an arc was overall pretty fun and an improvement from what we had before, but it's just an advertisement of what's to come, as we next finally enter the adaptation of Battle Network 2 proper, with the Gospel arc.